Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, new paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week, Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. Welcome to our program. I'm Richard Dugan, and we're going to be talking about community. We're going to be talking about new paradigms for a new world, and we're going to be talking about the next evolution. As if we hadn't quite finished with the first one. We'll find out more about what that's all about with the author of The Next Evolution, Jack Reed, here on Tell Me Your Story.
Talk with me, tell me your stories. I'll do my best to understand you. Oh.
It is a new evolution. It's the next evolution. My guest is Jack Reed. Jack, welcome to our program. It's good to have you with us here in studio.
It's good to be here. Hi, Santa Barbara and vicinity.
It's nice to, as I've always said, it's always nice to have guests in studio to look them face to face, look them in the eye, converse with them, and really get a sense of where they're coming from, what they're all about, as well as maybe delving into my own psyche as well. So it's kind of a two-edged sword in that respect, but it's good to have you here. Now, you have written a book, and you have been researching, and you've been developing the concept we've been talking about here on Tell Me Your Story for a long time prior to that for myself, and that is this concept that we have termed community. And I use the term in the verb context, that it's more than just a noun, a physical series of structures and people, but it's a mindset. It's actually a way of life, this community that we're talking about. Is that where you're coming from with this next evolution?
Absolutely. So,
give us, in your own words, what you mean by community and especially this next evolution. And by the way, this evolution, is there a God in there somewhere? Did God create this evolution too? No, but tell us about, from your perspective, what is this community?
Well, first of all, in terms of the title, I was once introduced as the author of The Next Revolution, which was the working title originally for this because the idea is revolutionary, but a friend of mine suggested that we drop the R, make it a silent R, so that people didn't think, oh, well, this is all about revolution. It is about revolution in a positive way, so thus evolution fits. What's different here about community, because there's a lot of people talking about community, there's a lot of people talking about ecology, sustainability, and they have systems where they can create their own energy and all these other kinds of things utilizing the latest technology. But until we address 2 things, we're not going to get there.
And what are those 2 things?
Those 2 things are that unquestioned for thousands of years we've been doing this every person for themselves approach to how we go about life on the planet. And it is just astonishingly inefficient. Because if we used cooperation as the medium of exchange, we could eliminate 85% of the jobs. So people are out there talking about we need more jobs. It's nonsense. We need less jobs and more cooperation, because those jobs that create products that we don't need and built-in obsolescence, which is intentionally designed by manufacturers of so many things so that we can keep purchasing, consuming. It's like if we as a group of people, and this is what a group of us did, we got together and for 3 years we thought about and planned and recorded what it would look like if we designed a community that could be a prototype for the planet, a community that really worked for everyone and for all life on the planet for the highest good. And that is the vision that was presented in this book. Now, the second part of that, so we called that system for the highest good of all, replacing the everyone for themselves system. The second part of that unless people are talking about consciousness, and shifting consciousness so that people can actually do this, a system based on cooperation, then we still don't have it. There's a lot of people out there who are talking about consciousness. I enjoyed listening to my friend Barbara Marks Hubbard, who was on your show, a really fascinating show and interview that was.
Thank you.
And those people are out there talking about consciousness, which is one of the things that needs to happen. However, we need to take that consciousness and put it to work in terms of how we change the way we go about life on this planet. So it's that combination. It's replacing the every person for themselves system with a system based on the highest good for all, and the consciousness that it takes to do that. And the one will support the other as people see the one thing that's going to really shift things on this planet, as opposed to railing against all the imbalances that are going on, which is, it's so easy to be a critic, especially now. But the one thing that's going to shift is when people with their enlightened self-interest see a group of people that are living together far more abundantly, far more in touch with nature, with each other, with themselves, having more fun, being more healthy, having more free time, having more opportunity to be creative. It's like the people are going to start to say, geez, what do I need to do to get from here to there? Because these people are living a whole lot better than I am.
Yeah. You know, one of the thoughts that came to my mind as you're sharing this was the biosphere down in Tucson, Arizona. And this big old dome thing that they enclosed, and they put these people in there with all of the stuff that they thought they would need to sustain life. That is not what we're talking about, enclosing some area. We're talking about using what is out here in the open, us as well as everything in nature, to sustain life, to fulfill our, shall we say, our desires, our hopes, our dreams, our purpose, but also to support all of the life around us, human as well as all other types of life. And that doesn't mean that we won't be I would take it that doesn't mean that we wouldn't necessarily still have cattle ranches. And, I mean, there are going to be people who are still going to want to eat meat, but there are going to be those who are going to be vegetarians. There's still going to be all the different dietary aspects of it. There are going to be all kinds of people who want to live in this kind of home and that kind of home. I mean, you still have that individual aspect to it. So is that still part of that me for myself mentality that we have to shift out of, and then we all have to live in the same kind of structure and do the same kinds of things? Or are we talking about the aspect maybe that we want to kind of dive into a little bit here, and that is the consumptionism of consumerism that it just permeates and really started somewhere around after World War II, that just is going wild in this country and around the world.
Yeah, I sent you that excellent video called the Story of Stuff that talks about this consumerism and how it all started and how it was intentionally designed to...
And by the way, I did interview a gentleman about 15 years ago who actually wrote a book called Built-in Obsolescence. I still have that interview, and I wish I'd pulled that audio up. We could have played it, a little bit of it. And I was shocked. You're building into this refrigerator or this car the ability for it to break down after so many months or years,
so I have to go buy another one and keep the refrigerator and car manufacturers in business. There aren't enough disasters, and there aren't enough car accidents, and there aren't enough all of the other elements that cause them to deteriorate naturally. You've got to build in the destructive power of built-in obsolescence to keep the economy going. There's something wrong with that whole mentality. But let's get back to this other thing.
Yeah, you were talking about
what does it look like, the community that we're talking about in a general sense?
Well, you were talking, first of all, about the freedom. Will people have to give up individual freedom? And actually, people have done that in so many ways right now. So the choices will still be there, although we'd probably be not consuming a lot of the nonsense kind of products, like all the fast food kinds of things and all those many, many jobs that don't need to exist and have a negative impact on people's health. But in this community, and as a part of the description, is what we decided upon for the decision-making of this community is to do it by consensus. And there's a way to do that with people trained and holding the consciousness of the highest good, people being screened to hold that consciousness and with the ability of consensus, to do consensus decision-making, to be a part of this community and a part of the decision-making structure. And in that way, people then take back the control of their lives, because each and every person in the community essentially has control over their lives, as opposed to what we're experiencing right now, where we're dictated to by outside forces about so much of what we can and can't do.
So the decisions that we would make would be, and the outcome of those decisions would be based upon what is good, not just for the individual or the small group, but for all parties concerned. And I think in terms of where my wife and I live up on the hill, I live on almost the very top of the hill there. And I'm not going to do oil changes and dump toxic this and that and the other, because what if I lived down the hill from me and I was doing that? Because somehow it's going to work its way down. And what if I'm growing crops of some sort? I've got a small little garden, or I have some livestock. People know we have chickens and we have organic eggs and so forth. And everything that we do with them is done organically. We don't use chemicals. And if one of the chickens sadly gets sick or what have you, there isn't anything we can do for them, because if we start injecting them with medication, unless there's a holistic, organic, natural way of treating them, we have to let the natural course of events of evolution, so to speak, take its course and let them pass on. Is that sort of, we have to get into that mindset? That we have to understand that we are not here alone and that we do affect the lives of the people around us?
Yeah, that's part of it, is that people need to realize that everything is interconnected. Everything. And that's why the economic system and the political systems in the world are broken, is because they don't take that reality into account. So when people are talking about changing things, they talk about this thing or this one thing, tweaking this or that, or making some change here or there. But unless they address the whole interconnected whole, they're just putting Band-Aids on problems. And in this design of the community, what we're doing is creating a new model, replacing the every person for themselves model. We're creating a new model that's also based on consciousness, and so it's putting into place, as there's a quote on the back cover of the book by Bucky Fuller that says, in order to change something, don't struggle to change the existing model, create a new one and make the old one obsolete. And that's the essence of what has to happen.
That's why reform doesn't work, because you are reforming the existing. You have to create from anew, as you're saying.
Yeah, as I say, we've got to start putting the logic into ecological. And the logic is that the current system of the every person for themselves model is just not going to work.
Yeah. We have a small compost pile, and we try to put everything that is organic and biodegradable, if you will, into that compost pile, because it's going to make great fodder, if you will, for a garden that we want to put in this spring. And we're learning. I mean, we don't have all of the answers. We're still learning, and that's why I love the internet as such a wonderful resource. And many, many people here along the Central Coast are a great resource as well. And we have been able to connect with them. I would like to get into the beginning steps of how we begin this process. I first want to let our listeners know that this is Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan. We're talking with the author of The Next Evolution. It is a blueprint for transforming the planet. Jack Reed is my guest, and we're talking about this process that in some instances you could say has been around for a long time, but probably more in bits and pieces. Probably more in terms of, well, I've heard a little bit of this here and a little bit of that there, the green movement and recycling and hybrid cars and maybe even bicycles and this and that. I mean, all of these different things. I mean, we are in the process, we're constantly looking around for a wonderful place that we might call our own and purchase the land. And if there was a hill, I thought, wouldn't it be wonderfully prudent not to build the structure that we want to live in on top of the hill or on the side of the hill, but into the hill? Because the earth is a wonderful insulator in the wintertime as well as the summertime. Why wouldn't you utilize that concept? So there are all of these different wonderful ideas that are floating around out there. But it begs the question, when we talk of community, what's the first step? What was the first step that you took in this process to start, putting this into the structure that it is today? And I know that it is nothing, there's nothing in concrete because you're still working on it. You're still, shall we say, playing with it and molding it.
The first step that we did was, as I said, we got together with a group of people and because it existed in my head for so many decades as an idealized kind of thing, but there was no details laid down so that we could point out to everybody, this is what it would look like and this is how it would work. Mm-hmm. So we met almost weekly for 3 years putting this together and exploring every avenue of the description of what the community would look like and how it would work.
How did the personalities work out in that 3 years? I mean, did you have a lot of knockdown dragouts, or was everybody always congenial?
We were friends, but we had, there's an interesting thing that happened. We decided to make all our decisions by consensus. And there was one woman in our group who was very intuitive. And we got to this one description about something, I don't even remember what it was. And so we went for a consensus to see if we were all in agreement about it. And she said, that's not it. And we were so pleased with ourselves. We said, sure, this is it. This is great. And she would and we tried to bludgeon her into this was early in consensus, into agreeing with us, but she wouldn't budge. And so we had to just put that on hold. And the next week we'd come back and hope that she'd changed her mind, which she hadn't. So then the third week we came back, and because we were stuck, we just started having fun and throwing out crazy ideas.
Yeah.
And just to be funny and to get way out there with it. And in the process of doing that, somebody would say something and then somebody else would build on that. And then we were at a whole other place in terms of our understanding of what was going on and how it could best be.
You had some real synergy going there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And this is absolutely lacking in the decision-making process of today, where you have, people, like in Santa Barbara, the city council, for instance, they can't even really meet with each other and talk about how best to do something outside of when they have the council meetings themselves. And in every level of government, the creativity, where we look at the big picture and look at the interconnectedness of everything, it's missing. And what we did in the description of this, which then later led to creating workshops on consensus decision making, is we came to to trust that the quiet voice. And, because we'd ask our friend, like, well, what's wrong? She couldn't tell us. What needs to be done? She couldn't tell us. All she knew is intuitively that wasn't it. And thank goodness for that, because her intuition got us into something that we would have never otherwise gotten to.
Yeah. I'm familiar with one of the faiths, the Baha'i faith, and they have a process of resolving issues or addressing concerns or coming up with solutions or answers and what have you. And basically, their local and national and international governing bodies are made up of roughly 9 individuals who are part of that community. And they sit down and they're given the situation. And maybe somebody comes in and says, "Here's my problem," and they say, "Okay, we will come up with a solution for you. We'll come up with something for you." Now, first of all, whatever the solution is, it's not in concrete. It can always be readdressed. If it's not working, they will come up with something else. That's the first thing. Unlike our Congress, where it's in concrete. Second thing is, everybody at the table, and there are 9 of them, they all will put their ideas out on the table. The moment that idea is placed out on the table, it no longer belongs to the individual. It now belongs to the group. And then, after they've discussed this for a while, they then take a vote. Now, yes, there can be a 5-4, 6-3, 7-2, 8-1, etc. However, whatever we'll call it, the minority vote is, by virtue of being a member of this faith and being a member of this body, you accept that whatever the majority has decided upon is the decision of the body. So there is no dissenting position. You when you hear from the Supreme Court, well, the dissenting group said this, but the bill passed anyway. You don't get that, because the whole point is to help this person. This isn't about personal egos. This is about assisting this individual with their problem. When my wife and I and a dear friend of ours were building a greenhouse for my wife, we came to a point in the construction where we said, "Well, I don't know if she wants it this way or not. Let's go ask her." So we went to her and we said, "We need to know how you would like to have this," because remember, this was her greenhouse. First of all, she was shocked because nobody had ever asked her for her opinion before on something like this. And we said, "Well, why wouldn't we? This is going to be yours when we're finished." We took that position of consensus. That's how we did it. And we didn't always, it wasn't always peaceful. There were always the discussions. We had to deal with 4 dogs that were in the backyard that could conceivably break through certain barriers. And I was always thinking in that concept, so I was always bringing that to the table. Well, is it dog proof? Those kinds of things. This is the kind of process you're talking about, where if we're going to solve that person's problem, which is why we're here in the first place, we can't get into this infighting. We can't get into this, "No, this is my idea," kind of thing. That's really where you're coming from with this.
Yeah, it's even more interesting than that when you really get into consensus, because in the workshops that we did, a couple of times we'd reach an impasse with the group, and one time one of the groups just took some time, and this was their own idea, and they each took anywhere from 20 minutes to a half an hour to talk about what was going on with them right then. And as they had the freedom and the safety of the group to really explore that, some of it came down to things that they were not conscious of that they got conscious of when they had a chance to really go in being supported by the group. In one case, it was somebody in the group reminded this person of one of their parents. And the reason why they couldn't come into consensus with that person's idea had to do not with the idea, but with their unresolved issues with their parents. And for each person, there was something going on that was like that they were able to release and let go of with the love and support of the group. And then after that, when we came back to the issue itself, it was like everybody was very quickly in consensus because all the againstness disappeared because it had nothing to do with the issue. So these are the kinds of things that happen in decision making all the time that people never get to because we've got such an outer oriented society that's based on the fragmentation of taking like one small thing and trying to put a Band-Aid on the problem instead of realizing the interconnectedness, never taking the time to address the safety and the connections with the people that are going on in the group.
That sounds like a mini encounter group in a very positive way that's incredible. That is you don't have that kind of a safe space within the city council chambers, nor do you have that in Congress. I beg to say that you have it even less in Parliament in England. I mean, you've seen some of the pictures of them, and boy, do they get into it. Let's talk about the size of the community. Now, I know we're talking about the global family, but it has to start at a smaller level. Where does it start? If we can start getting into some of the specifics in that regard, and we'll kind of jump around a little bit, but what do you envision? What has your group envisioned should be the beginnings, the seeds, if you will, of the community that will then hopefully spread around the world?
The description that we laid out in our paper, which was done by the Community Planet Foundation, which was a nonprofit organization that was founded to promote and promote this vision of a world that works for everyone, was that we had a description of a community of 500 people and what it would look like and how it would operate. There's 12 questions that we have which go to describing the community and how it operates, and those are all in the book, anywhere from how do we share our abundance, which talks about the economics, to the decision making, which was how do we reach consensus, to healthcare, which was how do we vitalize ourselves, to the food production and preparation, which was called how do we nourish ourselves. So we had all these questions that go to describe the community. So that description is laid out. The first step is to create that community. Now, to me, unless it's done on a scale, because part of the point of doing this is to create something that would be large enough to actually to begin the transformation of the planet. And I figured that's around 3,000 people. So that would be 6 communities, a cluster of 6 communities interconnected. That would be about 500 people communities, which would be about 3,000 people, and that would be enough to get the notice, to have people come in and study it, to study the new economics, if you will, that are based on the highest good, to study how incredibly more efficient it is for people to be living based on cooperation. And so that's the plan. So the first step is to create the first 500-person community. And that would be getting the land and getting the people and doing this. And of course it would be sort of like an Epcot Center in terms of all the technology, all the incredible technology that's out there in terms of how to do this, but it would not look anything like an existing city, because one of the things that would be different here was people own the entire community. You don't own the individual house. You own the community, a share of the community. So that's very different, and you don't have to have roads, the kind of grid pattern to streets. This could be a pedestrian community where people can walk to where they live, and as you say, depending on where this community is, the homes can be put into the side of the hills. I mean, it all depends on where this is. It'll look different in different places.
Exactly. Are you familiar with a place, and I believe it's called Arcosanti?
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah. I've driven by. Unfortunately, I've driven by many times. I don't think I've ever stopped there to actually take a tour of the place. And I lived right down the street in Phoenix from it. Never really took a chance to tour it. However, I did receive a great deal of information over the years. I saw many presentations and what have you, and it was a wonderful concept. I mean, at the time, it was very futuristic in its concept, and I thought it was a wonderful idea. I thought it was rather interesting that they were funding it just through the sale of the bells that they sold, and who knows, maybe that was going very well. I don't know if it is. I don't know that much about it now. But I do know that it was a designed and sort of a planned community of sorts, sort of along the same lines of what you're talking about. However, I think they were kind of stacking people. I don't think it was set up that much differently. It wasn't a grid system, but it was more like this huge structure, and you had different levels, and maybe like a giant mall of sorts. When you look at other communities around the world, because one of the thoughts that came to my mind was, well, aren't the Amish kind of doing this within their own belief system, where they have no mechanized conveyances? That's all horse-drawn carriages, and it's a very simple life. They're all responsible for the community, as it were. If I may quote someone, I won't mention the name, everybody will know who it is, but it does take a village to raise a child. We're all responsible for the community. As you say, yes, I own the community, ergo now I'm responsible for it too. But aren't there other models that are out there that are working, as far as you know?
I don't know of anything that's being done on this kind of scale that we're talking about, and that really incorporates the collective ownership and redefining wealth as use and access rather than possession, where we can have so much more. The Amish are doing a lot more of the cooperation, but they still have the individual ownership and of their places, although they do have a great deal of cooperation. Mm-hmm. Also, I think the thing to do at this point, obviously, is to utilize the technology that's available in terms of what we can do in creating energy, what we can do in resolving the whole waste process. So I know of a lot of things that are variations mm-hmm. of communities that are doing variations of the every person for themselves system that are trying to incorporate more ecology into it and more sustainability into it. But I don't know of anything that's being done that addresses both switching to a highest good for all system and addresses the consciousness of the people. Yeah. That it would take in order for us to really do this and base it on the highest good consciousness.
I know too that there's been a lot of I've had some discussions with people in regards to the concept of redistributing the wealth, and that's not a solution either, because we still have the same system that we're in now. You know, just because you give everybody the same amount of money doesn't mean that it takes care of the issues. What I find so interesting is in your description of one of the situations in these gatherings you had over the last 3 years was this mini encounter experience that we all need to have on a regular basis to clear away, or as in some of the encounter groups I've been in, to peel away more and more of the layers of the onion to get to the core of who and what we are and what we're really all about and what we really want to do. Getting through all of that emotional stuff that really isn't the issue, that really isn't going to solve the problem. Yeah, you look like my dad and I have real problems with my dad, or, you have the personality of my mom and, it just grates on me, or whatever the issues are. Those are the things that each one of us needs to get through so that we can get on with the process of this consensus of community. And as I was sharing with Barbara Marks Hubbard in the interview, that I have known for a long time, not believed, but known, that there is another way. I don't know what it is. I just know there is. Because if we came up with this way, and we've been doing it for so long, there has to be. I know there is another way to live. And as you describe it, it works for me. You don't have to worry about accumulating debt. You don't have to worry about, continually polluting your environment. You don't have to be concerned about whether or not you and or your family will be cared for if something were to happen. And I'll bet you that the whole issue of health care and the issue of insurance are almost a moot point, because you're not going to have the kinds of conditions that bring about a lot of the hazards we have in our modern day society. I mean, I just feel that it is a simpler way of living, but it is not going to be something that is going to be easy to get to. Let's go to getting there from the consciousness perspective.
Could I say one thing
Sure.
first about what you just said? Mm-hmm. Because a lot of the health care that's going to be available in this design is preventative health care. And
Wellness.
That's going to save a whole lot of money. It could save a whole lot of money if we were doing it right now. Mm-hmm. But when people are kept healthy as opposed to treating them when they get sick, and that's one of the options when health care is provided within the community, and there's no question of how much it costs.
Yeah.
For living there, the housing, the food, the health care, it's all part of living there.
Right.
And
I mean, you fall out of a tree and you break your leg, that's a whole nother thing. Okay. But to avoid the viruses and the bacteria and those kinds, there's preventative.
And the second thing I wanted to say about your description is because this is important to me, is there's one of the 12 areas that we describe in the book that goes to make up the community is how do we enjoy ourselves? Because that's one of the things that there's a quote in the book that says, that's a Community Planet quote, we're going to have to start learning to live with more fun in our lives because people have so lost track of what it is to get together and play and have fun and be creative in various pursuits and have fun. And in a community with shared resources, almost anything that you want to do with people is going to be there and available, and people are going to have a lot more free time to do this. So how do we enjoy ourselves? Having fun bringing fun back into our everyday lives is going to be one of the real key things that's going to inspire people to both have a lot of joy while they're there, and with the world looking at this saying, geez, I want to have more fun in my life too, because the way we're going about life right now in the information age, it's so eaten into people's time that people are so exhausted they just have time to go home and work on their computer or watch their television or something.
Yeah. Well, I have to say that this past week, my wife and I, since the rains have stopped and things are drying out, and as far as I'm concerned, the wood that I need for the fire is drying out too. One of the things that we love to do is we love to take our fire pit on wheels and get it going in the evening and just sit there with a glass of wine, whatever it is that we want to have to enjoy. The dogs are now running around in our yard, having a great time, protected from the fire, and just sitting there. And it was not last night, but it was the night before last. I was sitting there with my wife, and we were sitting there with the fire, and it was going, and the incredible stars in the sky. And then the dogs finally had worn themselves out, and they were laying on the ground and what have you. And I said, I'm loving this. I was so in that moment. At that time, it was so incredible, and I could stay here for another 2 hours or more. I mean, it was or longer. It was incredible. For me, at that moment, that was fun. To be able to just enjoy, relax, listening to all of the frogs croaking all over the place. And the sun had already gone down, and the air had become cool and moist, and it was just beautiful. That is part of it. Or here on the Central Coast, going down to the beach and playing in the surf. We don't take enough time for that. I have to say that I haven't played in the surf since I haven't taken the time. And when I did that, I went to the beach, parked the car, got out, walked down to the beach, didn't take my shoes. I walked up and down in the surf in my shoes. And I loved it. It was fantastic. I said, this is why I moved here. And I haven't done that since. because I've gotten so wrapped up in the work.
And your story is so similar to everybody else's,
Yeah.
too. We've got to start having more fun in our lives.
Exactly.
That'll be a key part of what's going on here. And you talked about seeing the stars at night, too. That was part of the community description as well, is we need to keep the night light down so that people can look up and see the stars, because it's an incredible treat when you look up there and
And it can be very inspiring.
Yeah, exactly.
New ideas, creativity,
That's
new
one of
growth in the community.
That's one of the things that got me started on this whole process when I was a kid, is looking up at the night sky and realizing that there was stars and galaxies up there, and it's like, what does it all mean?
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
Yeah. Jack Reed's my guest. He's the author of The Next Evolution. It is a blueprint. And it's the architects, they're us. Now, the concept in The Next Evolution, of course, is the architects are the group of people. And how many people were involved, roughly?
There in this, the group that met, there were 6 of us and 5 of us at various times.
So it fluctuated 5 and 6.
Yeah.
That's a relatively small group to stay together for 3 years. Because again, I mean, 2 people staying together for 3 years for some is difficult enough. But 5 people with with the diverse personalities, and then as you describe those little, as I say, encounter experiences, and yet you manage to come up with this plan, says to me that if 5 or 6 people can do that, why in the heck can't 365 or 465 or whatever the number is, why can't they resolve and deal with the issues that focus on us, their own people, that would then allow us to help the people around the world, to show them, hey, there's another way, there's a better way. Don't know why. All I know is you guys were able to do it. Consciousness. We want to talk a little bit about that. What is or are the processes that, or maybe there's a questionnaire / checklist, test that you have to pass to prove that you've reached that certain level of consciousness to participate in either this council of consensus, community planet group, or to be a part of this community. I can't say that, I'm ideal for it. I mean, listen to everything that I've just told you about my life. I want to be a part of this community, which I do. But how do I know that I would fit in under the category of consciousness? Is my consciousness raised enough? And how do I get it raised to that point? Or focused enough on what needs to be focused on to be a productive, contributing, and responsible part of the community?
Well, first of all, let me sneak in here a little plug. If you want to contact us, part of that to get involved is go to the website, which is, ready? You're writing this down? It's communityplanet.org. communityplanet.org. So you can get in touch with us. There we have a group of people who's meeting locally called the Visionary Architects of a World That Works for Everyone. And to address the other question, in terms of the screening, there's our last of our descriptions of the 12 sections on how did the community work is called How Do We Expand Our Community? Mm-hmm. And the group of people who are working in that segment of the community have the dual responsibility to screen and also to get the message out there to the world about what we're doing and how this could transform the planet. So the screening, we figured, would consist of doing consensus trainings for people to teach them how to do consensus decision making. And when we did the workshop, we would spend, after the first meeting where we would have them do a consensus process with no background information at all, and then when they saw how difficult it was, the next 4 weeks we would just deal with the consciousness that it took to do that before we then put them back in to start doing the consensus processes again. And of course they would drift back into the way they would go about regular decisions, and then we were able to do the stop and teach from there so that they're right in the middle of it and they could see what needs to be done. So the group would decide, as one of the final processes, would decide who would be the most ready person to come into the community in terms of being able to do consensus decisions, and to come into consensus about that, and then who would be the next most and the next most and the next most, and then what kinds of things each person would have to really work on and focus on to get to that place where they are very ready to do the consensus process.
So there's a certain element of, if I can put it this way, on-the-job training where they're going to go in and they're going to be tossed into the consensus concept, but for a while they're going to keep going back to the way they've always made decisions, but the group is going to bring them back saying, no, this is the way we do it. So it's a training process. It is a training process, and if they're able to get the training, acclimate it, and assimilate it within themselves to become someone who knows how to come to consensus, that's sort of the first step.
Yeah, it's a training, but it's also a training that requires a shift in consciousness. It's a training that requires people to go to that place inside them where they access that consciousness of the highest good, where they realize our collective oneness.
You know, it's been told to me that we're in the right place at the right time here along the Central Coast, that the people that are coming to us and that are gathering together are of like mind, if you will. We've used several different terms to describe them, fringe dwellers, and all of these are very positive, very affirmative terms, and like-minded, and so forth and so on. And it seems to me like there would be quite a number of people here in this area who might fit into that category, who might be amenable and pliable enough and willing to make the shift. Because there is a willingness, because a lot of times we hang on to where we are because it's safe and it's easy and it's comfortable and we don't have to take responsibility. So there is that certain element of, well, if you're going to make the shift, there's an awful lot that's going to be required of you by yourself, not by anybody else, but by yourself, to live within your integrity and to be responsible for who you are and your decisions and the consequences or the outcome, the results of your choices. And that's really what the program is here to bring to the forefront, is those new paradigms, those new ideas, those new shifts, those new ways of thinking. It seems to me, too, from a religious perspective, that an individual who is going to make that shift, and I'm not saying this is required, but it just seems to me a natural outgrowth, that they would shift from where their belief system was literally to a different belief system. Because this new way of living, it almost can't embrace those old paradigms, those old concepts. You know, and then I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them, but in this new place, I don't think that they would fit in real well. You know, the old theological constructs, dogmas and doctrine and so forth. Do you find that at all, or is that something that it is not even addressed, that is a personal, that I will keep to myself kind of thing?
Well, I think what people have to have is respect for one another and to not run their belief systems on other people. So if people can do that, and if people can recognize our oneness, and not be sitting in judgment like that person doesn't believe what I believe, so therefore they're wrong. But if we can, like, if I can believe what I believe and you can believe what you believe, and then we go about like, okay, and we're here in this community to not only have fun and have optimal lifestyles for ourselves, but we're also here because we recognize that there's something that has to be done for the planet at this time, and that's the thing we're collectively working on it. So what am I going to make important here? It's sort of like in a marriage where if you and I are married, there's an interesting idea. But if we're married and we're having an argument and there's something that I can do to just blast you or to make you wrong, to show that, to win the point. So then I have to in my mind think like, okay, what is important to me here? Is it important for me to be right and the other person to be wrong? Or is what's important for me to have the most loving marriage and relationship with you that I can possibly have? So what choice do I want to make here? And whether it's two people relating or whether it's people relating within the community, it's like that's going to be the essence of it, is where in terms of incorporating the various religions and the various points of view, it's like what are they going to make most important? And at this time in our history, we've got to choose making the planet and making life and the world work for everyone more important, or else it's going to get to the point in the next few decades where it's not going to work very well for anybody, including those who have a whole bunch of resources.
And we're fragmented as it is. We don't need to fragment any further, because that's not working. And it's not working more and more as we go along. As we go along here, this is Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan. I'm joined by Jack Reed, author of The Next Evolution. And I'm wondering if this group of 5 or 6, are you still getting together on occasion? I mean, are you still putting things together, training people for this group of 500 or what have you? What's happening right now?
Well, if one goes to the website, they can see that we offer trainings on consensus decision making. The group that I was working with was in the LA area at the time, because this was several years ago, and so we're kind of scattered about. One person's teaching English in Taiwan, I think, and married a nice Taiwanese woman. And so I'm now affiliated with another group in Santa Barbara called the Visionary Architects of a World That Works for Everyone, and we have meetings. And if you if you go to the website, that's communityplanet.org, and contact us, we can plug you into what's happening here in terms of our local group.
And you can also access that same website through richarddugan.com. That's Richard, DUGAN.com. Love to have you email me too, richard@richarddugan.com. Tell Me Your Story is the name of the program, and this program will be able to be heard on the website, richarddugan.com, following this broadcast. You can go there and listen to it again. If you'd like, download it, put it into your, I guess you could put it into your iPod. It is an MP3 file. Share it with family and friends. Give them these new concepts, new ideas. Put these ideas into their head. I have to tell you, Jack, that is one of the things that I love about doing these shows, is that whoever is listening right now and who has heard everything that we've said up to this point can't unhear it. Even if they disagree with us, even if they're sitting there fuming and they're red in the face, they can never unhear it. They can't delete it. They can't put it into a folder they can put it into a folder and hide it away, but it's still there. They can't, it will come up again. And that's one of the things that I love of putting the ideas out there. We're not forcing anything upon anybody. We're just putting it out there. We want you to hear it. We want you to consider it at least. At least consider it. Put it to an internal vote, so to speak, for right now. Because one day it will come back. And you say, I heard something about that. And you're going to be in a different mindset 2 months, 2 years, 20 years down the road. And I know that I am, because as you were talking about getting away from this I-me concept, a few years back, I was having a real struggle with that, because I wanted to be able to say, I did this myself. This is mine. Okay? Nobody helped me with it. And it's taken a few years for me to get to the place where I have to acknowledge there's nothing I've done that has been solely mine. I can't claim anything, and that's okay. That I have had assistance and support and help and guidance with everything I've done. Yeah, I'm sitting here and I'm asking you the questions, and it's my radio show. Well, it isn't really my radio show, because as you've listened to the programs, you made this comment before we started about how the interviews go where they go. I have no control over them. I'm just along for the ride. I feel that way with this whole aspect of community, that I want to be a part of that. My wife and I both want to be a part of something like that. We've been wanting, and we felt as though we were coming close to it back in Phoenix. And I feel as though maybe we're getting close to that again. Finding the right group of people, if I can put it that way, who want to achieve the same result. And that is a place where we can live and have fun. As a matter of fact, many of the interviews that I've done, the final analysis is the whole purpose in life is to be happy. And part of that is having fun. And I see community as fostering that in a huge, huge way. I mean, I have fun working with my chickens and cleaning out the coop. You have fun cleaning Yes, I love being down there with those chickens. I didn't think I would. With my history of the problems I've had with birds and my eyes, but I love it. And it's a wonderful thing. And it's been wonderful having you on the program today. And I thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And I look forward to maintaining and continuing the conversation with you and the connection. Maybe even meeting some of these other people who were involved in this 5 or 6 person enclave, as I like to call it, and discussing this further and just and being a part of where it goes. I think it would be very exciting.
Could I say one more thing?
Very quickly, yes, please.
If you want to get a copy of the book, which will give you the vision, go to the website, communityplanet.org, and call me. Drop by the house, and we can chat, and I'll be happy to sign it for you. You can go to bookstores, but be kind to the Community Planet Foundation, and we get much more out of it if you come directly to the Community Planet Foundation. And I'd love to meet you, anybody who's interested.
Great. Communityplanet.org.
That's right.
All right. And you can access it again through my website, richarddugan.com, communityplanet.org, and get involved. Check it out. Maybe you know someone who is interested. If you're not, pass the information on. That could probably be the biggest service that you can do for someone, is to pass the information on that you hear. If it doesn't quite resonate with you, it's not quite where you're at this point in time. I'm Richard Dugan, and I thank you so much. I thank Jack for joining me and all my guests, and you for listening. My love to all. Have a great day. Bye-bye.